Americans who visited Europe, what was your biggest WTF moment? Spent a summer in Germany. They had the cleanest, safest, best tasting tap water, but nobody drank it, and they called it toilet water. Also, the older people in village seemed super grumpy and mean and would never smile or respond if you said hello or good morning, but if you asked them a substantive question, like how to get to the museum, they would spend 15 minutes telling you the fastest way to get there, the scenic way to get there, everything interesting you should do on the way there, why that museum isn't actually that good, and you should go to this other museum instead, all the different ways to get to the better museum, and where their grandmother used to live before the war. Funny enough, my biggest WTF moment came from an American. We were at a restaurant in Cinque Terre, Italy called Trattoria del Billy. About halfway through our meal, I overheard a guy with a Tennessee Arkansas accent say, verbatim, in a frustrated tone, "You need to speak more American." To his waiter. "This isn't Rome. This isn't Venice. It's a small town called Manarola." The odds of finding someone fluent in your language are drastically lowered. However, this guy was pompous enough to not only continue to berate his waiter, but then tell the manager who came around that he needs to hire someone who can speak American in a foreign country, of which he obviously speaks zero of their language. Seriously, WTF. One time in Rome, it started pouring. As I sought shelter, I saw an older man selling one single umbrella. Strange as it was, I needed that umbrella, so I haggled with him and settled on €3. He had the upper hand in that transaction. I wander over to a coffee shop to dry out for a little bit. When I go to leave, the umbrella is no longer in the bucket by the door. Upset at myself for being so trusting, I head into the rain again. Guess who I see? The same old man selling the same umbrella. I try to confront him about stealing back my umbrella, but he claims not to remember our interaction at all. It's pouring and I have a number of miles to walk, so I go through the same charade with him again to re-procure the umbrella. At least this time he took €2. Late to the thread, but here goes. Went to Sweden on a vacation package. Stayed at a wonderful historic hotel for part of the trip that had a restaurant inside of it. Part of our package called for a free dinner at the hotel, and we had asked that it be the night we arrived. We arrived and got settled in our room and then went to check out the restaurant. As soon as we walked in, there was no one there, only a hostess. She immediately said they were expecting us and we could sit anywhere. There was no one else in this gorgeous, ornate restaurant. A waiter came out and said they had prepared a special meal for us. We asked why it was so empty, and he said the restaurant was closed one day a week, and today was that day. We were shocked. We apologized profusely and told them that we had booked through another company and would have just scheduled it for another day. He said it was no problem and we had some free extras such as wine and dessert. The main course ended up being a huge piece of meat, which we jokingly said must have been because we were big fat Americans. No one rushed us, we had a great time, and after we left they closed the restaurant for the night. It was a total WTF moment because if you booked something like this in America, they'd either force you to reschedule or just have the restaurant closed with no explanation. The 14-year-old alien boys trying to get with the 24-year-old chicks I was with was pretty funny. Also, the fact that they don't chill shots of Jaeger was fairly unsettling. We went to Rome, Florence, and Paris after my first year in college as a French major. I think I was just amazed the whole time, like, wow, this building is hundreds of years older than the country I live in. The architecture of everything was stunning. My favorites were the Duomo in Florence and Notre Dame de Paris. In the UK, light switches are often outside the entrance to the bathroom. So you are constantly walking in and then walking back out once you remember that the switch isn't actually inside the room. It also makes it easy for people to turn the light off on you. This seems like a nightmare for anyone with children. In Germany they have to give something like 60 days notice if they are planning to fire or planning to quit a job. For some reason that seems so crazy, but I realized being fired with no notice whatever is pretty feud, and we should have a similar system honestly. And how great their recycling system was. And also I didn't realize the water closet was the bathroom until after my trip. I felt stupid, really stupid. In my early 20s, on my first trip to Europe, I took an Italian ocean liner, New York to Genoa. My WTF moment was going out on the deck on morning 6 for the foggy passage through the Straits of Gibraltar. Europe emerging through the mist on my left and North Africa on my right, coupled with the awareness of how many voyagers throughout history had sailed through that passage, including my Italian grandparents traveling in the other direction, gave me chills. Went to Dover, England and saw a motherfucking castle. The newest section was built like 300 to 400 years before my country was founded. Turned a corner and the next part was 200 years older than that. 10 minutes later walk up to a Roman lighthouse built 2000 years ago. Damn. Edit. The best part was we arrived the night before we went to the castle. I didn't see it on the ride to the hotel. We get inside and our room is the largest room we had seen at any of our hotels. Apparently the hotel was built by an American company, so the rooms were built like they would be in the US. I open the curtains to see what is out my window, usually a parking lot, another random building or something boring. Not today, Yank, not today. Castle. We were driving through Spain, and to the side of one of the roads, we noticed these massive bird nests in the high-power electrical towers. They were at least twice the size of eagles' nests that I had seen. And there were so many of them. Then we saw these giant birds in them. We stopped by the side of the road and tried to take some pictures, didn't have a great zoom lens, sadly. But no one else was stopping. It was so odd. We are accustomed to at least a few people stopping to watch the osprey, eagles, or other birds where I'm from. So a few days later, we are chatting with a German tourist, and we bring up the birds. I think she thought we were joking until we pulled out the pictures. Then she started laughing. Storks. Those are storks. Of course, don't you know that? They are everywhere and such a nuisance. Don't you have storks in America? Well, no. Then she looked confused. Well, if you don't have storks, who brings the babies in kids' stories? Storks. How does that work? And that was when we realized that the story of the storks makes a whole lot more sense when storks are nesting on every chimney, tree, or tall place. For me it was a lack of insects in England. Not that they don't exist, but I'm from Michigan with lots of swampy land around me. When I showed up at my dorm and saw there was no screen on my window, I was just thinking about all of the bugs that are gonna get in my room. I got one fly the entire month stay there. Yeah, if you leave your window open at night with the lights on you might get a couple of moths and the occasional spider, but we're really lucky with our relative lack of biting insects and flies. It was subtle at first, but it eventually boggled my mind how old everything was, and it was still integrated into everyday life. Like in the UK, drinking in pub that had been in the same spot since the 11th century, or eating dinner at restaurant in an 18th cathedral. Or in Prague going to club in a 14th century stone cellar or staying a hotel brewery that had been operating since the 15th century. The oldest building in my vicinity is from the 1750s, which is prehistoric by US standards, but, like, someone in Europe sees a building that is half a millennia old that no one is using and they're like, let's turn this into a disco. I loved it. Edit. Decide to do some quick research for perspective. The oldest surviving Native American structure in the US dates to 750 AD. The oldest structure from Spanish colonists is from 1521. The oldest structure from English colonists is from 1637. I lived in Germany for 8 years from 1992 to 2000, ages 4 to 12. I didn't realize it until I moved back to the States, but there were recycling bins on every street corner. It wasn't just a green bin then a trash can, it was a giant blue bin. One section for green glass, one for brown glass, one for clear glass, one for plastic, and one for paper. Oh, and going to a German school, students took public transit. There wasn't such a thing as a school bus. Edit. Public transit as in city buses and trains. The students weren't segregated into their own modes of transportation. I am from the New York, New Jersey area and have seen firsthand how out of control sporting events can get. Guys, mostly, getting drunk, vandalizing property, throwing cans and bottles, fighting, etc. So when a group of friends went to Germany for Oktoberfest some years ago, we also wanted to see a football, soccer, game. So we got tickets to see Bayern Munich versus some other German team in what, I think, was a meaningful game. We went more for the experience versus being huge fans. Game is great. I think the score was 5-1, so lots of action. The energy in the stadium was undeniable. Fans singing, jumping around, yelling for the entire game. Game ends. Munich wins. Begin the march to the subway station. Virtually an entire stadium, it seemed, exited to go to this one nearest subway stop. There are 4, maybe 5 cops standing at the entrance steps. Oh. This is going to be a huge problem. Thousands of people, lots of them intoxicated, heading toward these 5 cops at this one exit. It's going to be a disaster. Some guys start pissing on a fence within their view. What are they doing? And then, as we watched nervously, the crowd reached the cops and just stopped. Everyone stopped. No one fought. The guys pissing finished up their business, zipped up and joined the queue. Cops let enough people by to fill the first train, then the rest stopped, and so on and so forth, until our group went. It was incredible. That scene couldn't happen in America. Maybe this was an anomaly. But picturing an event at MSG, there's an army of state troopers to keep order, in addition to local cops, undercover cops, event security, etc. and brawls, and things still erupt with regularity. This was amazing to us. We still talk about it years later. That was some respectful, organized and orderly shit. 1. I went to the Netherlands for a music festival over the summer last year. The night before I went to a show and met a Scottish guy who came over and said, "You look American." I replied yes, and he immediately started talking about American politics and the military. It was weird how he assumed I was completely knowledgeable about all upper-level government doings, but otherwise was a chill dude. 2. The fact that there's no AC. I didn't realize it wasn't standard and was melting in my hotel room. 3. How uncommon asking for ice is. I've never gotten stranger looks when I would ask for a drink with some ice. One person at the festival had to confirm she understood me lol.